The Texas sun beat down like a punishment from God. Heat waves shimmered off the cracked earth, and the buzz of cicadas filled the air as I drove my pickup up the long dirt path to my ranch. It was supposed to be just another quiet day, chores, fence mending, and maybe a cold beer on the porch by evening. But something white and too perfect was tucked under the rusty latch of my gate. I pulled it free, an envelope, stiff and crisp, with my name in bold, officious font, and a seal that made my stomach twist. Willow Creek Homeowners Association. I hadn't paid much attention to the HOA when I bought the land 2 years ago. The property had been part of a larger ranching development, a cluster of 10 to 20-acre lots carved out of old cattle territory and sold off to folks like me, people who wanted out of the city, away from rules and noise. The HOA, I'd assumed, was just some formality. A group of retirees who cared more about potholes and signage than actual enforcement. I was wrong. Inside the envelope was a violation notice. According to the letter, my fence, sturdy and weather-worn, built with my own 2 hands, was encroaching 3 feet into the community buffer zone. It stated I was to remove or reposition the fence within 30 days or face daily fines of $150. It was signed by the head of the HOA, a name that had become infamous among the ranchers of Willow Creek, Karen Whitmore. Karen was everything you'd expect from the stories, a transplant from somewhere urban and sterile, with a taste for rules, order, and total control. She drove a spotless white Mercedes SUV, her yard had artificial turf, and she attended every HOA meeting like it was Congress. While most folks around here kept to themselves, Karen was the kind who peered over fences, documented your trash cans, and took pictures if your weeds grew too tall. She didn't live near me. Her house sat 2 lots over, close enough to see my fence through a pair of binoculars, apparently, but far enough that she had no business with what I did on my land. I stared at the letter, a slow anger building in my chest. I hadn't just measured my boundaries. I'd triple-checked them. I hired a county-certified surveyor before I even poured a drop of concrete for the posts. Every inch of that fence was on my side of the line. This was harassment, plain and simple. Still, I decided to play it smart. I gathered my documents, the deed, the plat map, the survey certificate, and took them to the next HOA meeting. It was held in the community clubhouse, a modern barn-style building that looked out of place against the rugged terrain. Inside were about 20 residents, most seated in folding chairs, sipping lukewarm coffee, and trying not to make eye contact with Karen, who stood at the front in a pale blue blazer like she was preparing to run for governor. I waited until open discussion. My name is Jake Redford. I began, holding up the letter. I received a violation notice claiming my fence is 3 feet over the property line. I'm here to state for the record that this is false. I have county-verified documents proving the fence is within my boundaries. Karen didn't even blink. Mr. Redford, the HOA's Land Use Committee has reviewed satellite imagery and made its determination. If you wish to contest it, you may file an appeal, but the fines will continue to accrue until the matter is resolved. Satellite imagery isn't a legal boundary. County maps are, I replied. If you'd like, I can show you. This meeting is not a venue for personal disputes, she interrupted. We're moving on. The room fell silent. A few residents shifted in their chairs. Someone muttered, typical, under their breath. So that was how it was going to be. Over the next week, I received 2 more letters. Then came the so-called inspections. Karen, in her white SUV, parking just outside my gate with her phone held high like some kind of paparazzo. She wasn't trying to fix anything, she was trying to break me. That's when I realized this wasn't about the fence. This was about control. Karen didn't like the idea that someone lived out here with more space than her, who didn't trim their mesquites or mow twice a week. My rugged independence, it offended her. I tried to call the HOA office, got voicemail. I emailed. No reply. I reached out to neighbors, and that's when the truth started spilling out. Jesse Moore, a retired Marine who lived down the way, had gotten fined for flying the American flag on a pole that was too tall. Alina Chavez, a single mom raising chickens, had been cited for unsanitary conditions, even though her coop was spotless. Karen had turned the HOA into her personal kingdom, and the board, composed of hand-picked allies, rubber-stamped her every move. But if Karen wanted a fight, she was going to get one. I called a friend of mine who owned a drone photography business and had him do an aerial scan of my property with GPS overlays. Then I asked him to fly over Karen's. And that's when the bombshell dropped. According to county records, Karen's lot was 1.7 acres. But the drone footage showed her white vinyl fence enclosing more than 2.1 acres. She'd built a koi pond, a stone path, and even a decorative pergola in what was legally designated as Community Greenbelt. She had accused me of encroachment while literally stealing land herself. It was too perfect, too poetic, and I knew exactly what I had to do next. But before I went public, I needed more. I went down to the county clerk's office, pulled historical maps, property lines, permit filings, everything. I documented every inch of her illegal expansion. I even found a contractor who'd built her fence. He told me off the record that she insisted on pushing it back as far as possible. I also began attending every HOA meeting, sitting silently in the back, waiting. Each time Karen brought up community enforcement or covenant violations, I'd smile to myself, knowing the storm that was coming. Then I formed a group chat. Jesse, Alina, a few others who'd had enough. We called ourselves the Outliers. At first it was just a way to vent, share stories, but soon it became something more. We started gathering documents, recording HOA meetings, watching each other's properties. Resistance was forming, and Karen didn't even know it. By the end of that month, I had everything I needed: proof of my innocence, evidence of her violations, and a network of fed-up neighbors ready to take back control. Karen had drawn a line in the dirt, but I was about to show her just how sharp the edge of that line really was. You'd think exposing Karen's hypocrisy would be the end of it. It wasn't. If anything, it made her dig in deeper, like a tick under sun-scorched skin. The day after I sent the drone photos and documentation to the HOA board, I received another letter, this one nastier, stamped second violation, immediate action required. It claimed I was in breach not just for the fence, but now for unsightly materials stored near the perimeter, a blatant fabrication. Karen was retaliating, but I was ready. I compiled everything: her illegal land grab, the survey maps, timestamps of her fence construction, and her own words from the HOA minutes, statements where she bragged about reclaiming wasted land for beautification. I filed a formal complaint with the County Land Commission and attached all the evidence. That same week, Jesse and Alina helped me draft a petition for an emergency community meeting. We needed at least 10 homeowners to sign it. We got 27 in 2 days. The HOA was supposed to represent us. Instead, it had become a weapon. And we were done being targets. The Outliers became something real. We met weekly, at Jesse's place mostly, where the smell of grilled steak and mesquite welcomed even the most reclusive neighbors. We shared stories, collected letters, compared fines and violations. Karen, it turned out, had fined nearly half the neighborhood for arbitrary reasons. People were scared. Some had paid without protest. Others had tried to move. A few, like me, had fought quietly. But now we had each other. Meanwhile, I got a call from the county clerk's office. They were sending a team to resurvey the property lines in Willow Creek, thanks to the volume and severity of the complaints I'd filed. It was a game changer. I didn't tell Karen. I let her keep circling like a vulture, thinking she had the upper hand. At the next HOA meeting, she strutted into the clubhouse like she owned the land beneath her heels. Her smile was tight, eyes scanning the room, clearly trying to gauge how much control she still had. I stood up during the Q&A. I have in my hand a copy of the official county property survey. It proves my fence is on my land. More importantly, it proves your fence, Ms. Whitmore, is not. You've taken nearly half an acre of public greenbelt. The room went quiet. Karen laughed, a cold, brittle sound. Mr. Redford, those are doctored images. This is slander. No, ma'am, I said calmly, holding up a signed and notarized report. This is county-certified truth. The board members exchanged nervous glances. A few residents started whispering. Karen's power, once absolute, was crumbling. She doubled down. This is a smear campaign. The HOA board stands behind our enforcement policies. Anyone found non-compliant will continue to be fined. Then maybe it's time for a new board, Alina said, rising to her feet. Others murmured in agreement. That night, someone egged my truck. A petty move, juvenile and sad. But it told me one thing. Karen was scared. The next week, the county survey team arrived. 4 trucks with GPS rigs, laser equipment, and clipboards began measuring every lot in Willow Creek. Some neighbors looked on anxiously. Others cheered. A few offered coffee. Karen came storming out of her house in a sun hat and heels, waving her hands like a conductor trying to stop a train. You can't be here without HOA authorization. Ma'am, the lead surveyor said dryly. This land falls under county jurisdiction. We've received multiple complaints, and our office has issued a formal order. She retreated, fuming. 2 days later, the results were posted online. Property by property, the maps confirmed it. Karen's fence extended nearly 20 feet into the greenbelt. And mine? It was exactly where it had always been: legal, clean, correct. I printed out the results, highlighted the key numbers, mailed copies to every home in Willow Creek. Then I did something bold. I filed for an injunction against the HOA's enforcement policy, citing harassment, abuse of power, and defamation. I included every fine, every photo Karen had taken of my land, every instance of false accusation. Jesse and Alina signed affidavits. A week later, the judge granted a temporary restraining order. The HOA was barred from issuing new fines or collecting unpaid ones until the case was reviewed. The tide had turned. Karen tried one last power play, an emergency motion to fine me for creating hostility within the community. That meeting didn't go as planned. The room was packed. Neighbors who hadn't shown up in months filled every seat. Jesse brought a projector and played clips from HOA Zoom calls, ones where Karen mocked other residents, threatened board members, and discussed manipulating bylaw language to target specific homes. It was damning. When Karen realized the room had turned on her, she tried to adjourn the meeting. Motion denied, someone shouted. The board voted 4-1 to suspend her authority pending a formal review. She stormed out. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. But I did feel something powerful stir in my chest, something like justice. That night, the outliers held a bonfire. We didn't talk much about what came next. We just enjoyed the fire, the stakes, the laughter. For the first time in months, the tension in the air had lifted. But I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. Karen had built her empire on intimidation and false authority. And empires like that don't fall without noise. The next morning, a certified letter arrived. Karen had filed a countersuit, accused me of trespassing, defamation, even theft. I chuckled. She was desperate. And desperation, I knew, was just another word for weakness. It was time to end this for good. The morning after Karen filed her countersuit, I stood on my porch, coffee in hand, watching the first light break over the hills. The stillness of the land reminded me why I'd moved out here, to escape the chaos of the city, to live simply, to build something of my own. But now, this land had become a battlefield. I wasn't afraid of her lawsuit. It was weak, bloated with accusations that had no basis in law. My attorney, a quiet but razor-sharp woman named Marla Green, looked it over and smirked. She's panicking, she said. And this is an act of someone who's already lost. Still, we took it seriously. We prepared our responses, gathered new witness statements, and added a request for Karen to cover all legal costs if her claims were found to be frivolous. Which they were. Meanwhile, the County Land Commission issued a formal notice demanding that Karen remove her illegal fence and structures from the Greenbelt within 30 days. Failure to comply would result in daily fines and the involvement of county code enforcement. For the first time, Karen was the one getting the letters. She didn't take it well. Her white SUV began appearing less frequently. Her perfectly manicured lawn grew patchy. Neighbors whispered that she was having shouting matches on the phone. One of her allies on the board, Mrs. Dorrance, quietly resigned. But the final blow didn't come from the county or the courts. It came from within. Alina, with her fierce determination and teacher's knack for organizing, led the charge to call a special election to replace the HOA board. We needed 50% of homeowner signatures. We got 62%. The election was set for the end of the month. Flyers went out. Doors were knocked. Even old Mr. Wiggins, who hadn't left his porch in 5 years, cast a vote. Karen fought back the only way she knew how, with intimidation. She began leaving notes on doors, claiming the election was invalid. She sent mass emails warning of radical takeovers and property value collapse. But no one was listening anymore. She'd overplayed her hand too many times. The day of the vote, the clubhouse was packed wall to wall. People came early, stayed late, and watched each ballot count like it was the Super Bowl. When the results were announced, the room erupted. Karen and her loyalists were voted out. In their place, a new board, comprised of everyday residents like Jessie, Alina, and yes, even me, was sworn in. One of our first acts was to suspend all pending fines, pending a full audit of past violations. The second was to formally apologize to every homeowner harassed under the previous regime. Karen was livid. She refused to acknowledge the vote. She declared it null in a poorly formatted Facebook post that was promptly laughed off the community page. Then she vanished. Her house went dark. Her SUV disappeared. The rumors flew: bankruptcy, divorce, fleeing to Florida. But none of that mattered. She was gone. But we weren't done. With the HOA in new hands, we hired an independent auditor to comb through the books. What we found shocked even the most skeptical among us. Karen had misappropriated over $48,000 in HOA funds over 3 years. Private landscaping, unapproved improvements to her lot, payments to a consulting firm that turned out to be her cousin's shell company. We turned it all over to the authorities. The sheriff's office launched an investigation. Subpoenas were issued. Karen was served at a luxury spa in Scottsdale, Arizona. Publicly, she claimed innocence. Privately, she tried to settle. But it was too late for backroom deals. Justice, slow and deliberate, was finally catching up to her. The county ordered her to demolish the pergola and koi pond. Her property line was reset. Her fence, so smugly extended into land that was never hers, was pulled down by hired crews under court order. And me? I watched from my porch, coffee in hand, just like before. Only now, the horizon was clear. Later that month, the civil countersuit Karen filed against me was thrown out with prejudice. The judge cited a complete lack of credible evidence and warned her attorney about filing frivolous claims. Marla, my lawyer, gave me a high five in the courthouse hallway. But even with Karen gone, the damage she'd caused left scars. Neighbors who'd once kept to themselves now looked out for each other. The Outliers became the ranch stewards, an official volunteer group focused on protecting property rights and ensuring fair governance. We rewrote the bylaws, added term limits to board positions, and made transparency the law of the land. And as for the greenbelt Karen had stolen, we turned it into a communal orchard. Jessie planted peach trees. Alina organized a weekend cleanup. I donated fence posts and helped build a picnic area. What Karen had tried to control, we reclaimed. Together. But the most poetic part came 6 months later. Karen's property went up for auction. She defaulted on her mortgage. Her husband had filed for separation. No one in Willow Creek bid. Except me. I bought it for half its appraised value. The land that once stood as a symbol of her control was now part of my ranch. I didn't tear the house down. I leased it to a local veteran at a discount, a man who'd been priced out of the city and wanted peace, just like I had. And I rebuilt the fence. Exactly where the law said it should be. But this time, I added a gate. Not to keep people out, but to let them in. Because what Karen never understood was that land isn't about power. It's about community. And no amount of rules, threats, or vinyl fencing could ever change that. Year had passed since Karen Whitmore left Willow Creek. Spring rolled in with a gentle breeze and wildflowers dotting the pastures. The orchard in the reclaimed greenbelt was beginning to bear fruit. Peach blossoms opened like pink promises, and the community garden, once overrun by weeds, now brimmed with green. Life had returned to the neighborhood, not just physically, but spiritually. We were no longer just residents, we were stewards. Still, every now and then people would ask about Karen. They'd say her name in hushed tones, like she were a ghost who might rise again. But no one saw her. Not in court, not in town, not even on Facebook. Her social media presence had vanished entirely, like she'd been scrubbed from the grid. But Karen's story didn't vanish. It became a parable, a warning and a rallying cry. New families moved into Willow Creek. They brought laughter, children, cookouts. The HOA, once a source of fear and control, became a transparent council. We opened meetings with community updates, followed by potlucks. Decisions were made with votes, not threats. And most importantly, people cared. One afternoon, as I was fixing a gate hinge on the old Whitmore property, now part of my expanded ranch, a dusty SUV pulled into the driveway. A woman stepped out, mid-30s, hair pulled into a tired bun, wearing a blazer too stiff for the heat. "Mr. Redford?" she asked, approaching cautiously. I'm Emily Whitmore, Karen's daughter." My hand instinctively gripped the wrench tighter. She must have seen the look on my face, because she raised both hands. "I'm not here to fight. I'm not my mother." I offered her water, and we sat on the porch, the same porch from which I'd watched Karen build her fence, inch by a legal inch. Emily looked around, eyes misty. I hadn't been here in years. Last time, Mom and I got into a screaming match about a mailbox. She disowned me over it, said I was ungrateful. "She was difficult," I said, choosing my words carefully. Emily laughed softly. "That's generous." We sat in silence a while longer, watching birds flit through the orchard trees. "She passed away 3 months ago," Emily said. "Heart failure. But honestly, I think it was the loneliness that got her. After she left here, she burned every bridge she had." I nodded. "I'm sorry." "She left a box," Emily said, reaching into her car. "Said it was for the man who stole her kingdom." The box was old, oak, with rusted brass hinges. I opened it after she left. Inside was a folded HOA map with notes scribbled all over it. Color-coded plans. Lots she intended to restructure. There was also a stack of letters, unsent, all addressed to me. Some raged. Others apologized. One was just a list of things she despised about me, my truck, my dog, my voice. But the last one was different. It was dated the week after she lost the board election. "You beat me fair and square," it read. "And maybe you were right too. I see now that control gave me purpose, but also poisoned me. Maybe if I'd built fences to protect, not to conquer, I'd still have something worth protecting." I folded the letter and placed it back in the box. Then I locked it in my shed, beside the broken fence posts and old signage from the Karen era. A museum of mistakes. The rest of that year passed in peace. The HOA began offering workshops, how to raise chickens, compost, even welding basics. Willow Creek became a model for community-led governance. We hosted seasonal fairs. Visitors came from nearby towns to see how we did things. It all started with a fence and an unwillingness to be bullied. But legacy isn't just built on battles, it's built on what you build after the dust settles. One Saturday, during our fall harvest festival, a kid tugged at my sleeve. "Mr. Redford? Is it true you took down the HOA lady with a drone and some maps?" I laughed. "Something like that." "Cool," he said. "You're like a cowboy detective." I looked across the field, where Alina was helping kids carve pumpkins and Jessie was setting up hay bales for a bonfire. The old tensions were gone, replaced by warmth and shared history. "Not a cowboy," I said. "Just a neighbor." That night, under a sky lit by stars and string lights, we told stories by the fire. And when someone asked how the orchard came to be, Jesse just winked and said, "It used to be a battlefield. Now it's just peach trees."
We all raised a glass to that.
Because in the end, we hadn't just won back land. We'd won back each other. And no one, not even a Karen, could fence that in.